Thus began the fame of the Palmer Charge and of Arnie's Army. The line is perfect. He's got it. A fitting climax as Arnold Palmer.
Welcome to Isleworth, Arnold Palmer's world-class golf club and country club in Windermere, Florida. This program, entitled The Scoring Zone, is one of 4 videos in Arnold Palmer's golf instructional series, Play Great Golf. In the first volume, Arnold teaches us how to master the fundamentals. Next, he deals with course strategy. In this program you're about to watch, Arnold deals with the scoring zone, defined as those shots played from 100 yards in. The 4th program of the series deals with proper practice and fitness routines, as Arnold teaches us how to practice like a pro. So let's join Arnold Palmer, winner of 4 Masters Championships, 2 British Opens, 1 U.S. Open, and 61 PGA Tour events, in his office at Isleworth, as he introduces Play Great Golf, the Scoring Zone.
Welcome to Isleworth and Play Great Golf. We are in Volume 3, and we're dealing with the scoring zone. From 100 yards into the hole. This is an area where 50% of all the golf shots are played. And we really do not spend enough time practicing in this area. That 2.5-foot putt counts just the same as that 250-yard drive. We're going to deal with getting a feel for the game. Sand shots, chip shots out of the rough, all the things that really cost a lot of strokes if not properly played. Let's go out and start with the full wedge from 100 yards in. Before we get into how you can hit these shots to help save strokes, we're going to talk about some of the basic fundamentals. Let's just review a few of the things that are very important in making a good golf swing. First of all, you've just seen me take a full shot with a wedge, and the grip and the stance and the position of the ball and all these things relate to the wedge as I position the ball in the stance. The grip. First of all, the club lies diagonally across the left hand. The hand closes and the thumb and the forefinger form a V that goes down the shaft and points right up to the inside of the right shoulder, much the same as we talked about in the earlier tapes. The right hand is basically a finger grip, and of course, again, the V is pointing to the right shoulder. Okay, the overlapping grip. And of course, this is the standard grip being used by most of the pros today. So, the small finger of the right hand is overlapping the index finger of the left. Now, as we address the ball, we will notice the same things we talked about in the basic fundamentals of the earlier tapes. The ball is off the inside of the left heel. But as we stand at address, you notice that the straight line between the inside of the left shoulder, the hands, and the club remain the same as it has with all the other clubs. The hands are slightly ahead of the ball. And, of course, at address, our head is in a good position right over the ball, looking directly down to the ball. Now, we don't want to get in back of this shot to try to hit it up in the air, and we don't want to get ahead of the shot to try to hit it down. What we would do, and of course then we would move it out of position slightly by simply moving the ball back, and then we would be taking it out of the position of being off the left heel and back further in the stance, moving the head forward, and that would simply be to hit the ball lower or drive it to the target. To bring it up a little bit, we simply move laterally or back, keeping the stance in much the same position, but taking it just off the inside of the left heel and slightly forward to get the ball up in the air a little bit more. Okay, now we're looking at a full wedge. And do we take the same swing that we take with every other club? Pretty much so, yes. The club goes back, it comes back almost to a parallel position to the ground with the wedge. And of course, the big body turn and right back down and through. much the same as we have done with all the irons. Just for a review, let's just hit one, and this would be a normal full wedge shot that would go somewhere in the area of 100 to 110 yards. In the opening, we talked about hitting the higher, softer shot and the lower driving shot into the pin. First of all, let's talk about the higher shot. And of course, the one thing we want to do is open the stance about the same as we had before, maybe a little bit more, just a little wider opener stance. And the club is going to come slightly forward of the inside of the left heel. Now, I see a lot of people do things that I really would like to go up and say, hey, let's not do that. And that is by allowing the hands to get in back of the club. Now, I have stressed this in many videos, and I'd like to just stress it one more time. I don't really think there are many shots in golf, and I won't say all shots, but very many shots in golf that you want your hands in a negative position, simply because it makes it much more difficult to hit the shot the way you want to. So let's say we want to hit the shot up in the air. We want to still keep our hands in that forward position. And the ball is slightly forward. As we take the club back, we're going to delay the body slightly and allow the club to precede us through the ball and into the air and allow it to get very high going into the green that we want to hit that high, soft wedge shot. So here we go. The ball is forward. The grip is much the same as it has been. And the position of the club now is slightly forward, and the body is slightly in back of the ball. Take the club back slightly on the inside and right up in the air. And the ball will have a very high trajectory because now we're lagging behind just slightly. Okay, now we talked about the higher wedge shot or getting the ball up in the air. Now let's talk a little bit about the lower wedge shot, the driving shot into the pin. First of all, in the higher shot, we move the ball forward. Now we're going to move the ball back. And when we move the ball back in the stance, relatively the same distance as we moved it forward to hit the high shot. And as we address the ball, the hands will stay pretty much in the same position. The club face will be turned to a square or slightly hooded position, closed, to keep the ball low. Now, as we look at it, you'll see the ball is positioned back in back of the left heel. The hands are slightly forward. As we take the club back, the club will maintain a lower profile going into the shot, meaning it will not be coming up as quick or back through and up as quick as it did when we were hitting the high shot or the high wedge. Okay, so as we address the ball, the hands are forward, the club is square, and we're going to take the club back slightly on the inside and hit right down and through the ball. And keeping it right on line with the target. I'm reminded of an instance at Cherry Hills in 1960 in the National Open that I was fortunate enough to shoot 65 the last round to win by 2. Winning by 2 is saying, hey, I had a little cushion, but I got that cushion by being able to play the full wedge shot to the 17th green. And when that happened, I was standing in the fairway waiting for Ben Hogan to finish the hole. Well, what Hogan had done ahead of me was he had gotten a little too close and reduced the shot to a little shorter shot, and trying to get the ball real close to the hole to pick up that stroke he needed, he got a little too close, hit the water, and of course was in the process of playing the shot out of the water when I walked up in the fairway and watched him. He had a bad hole. That was kind of good for me, bad for him, but the line is that I kept my second shot well back so I could hit that full wedge to the green, and was successful in doing that and was able to two-putt safely for my par 5. So sometimes it isn't always an advantage to get as close to the green as you possibly can. Just keep it back 100 yards or so where you can hit the full wedge and not take the chance of missing that shorter shot into the green. In the scoring zone, there are different shots that we'd like to be able to play. We've shown you the high shot, the low shot with the pitching wedge. Now, I'm going to talk just a little bit about a pitch and run shot from approximately 100 yards out. Why would you play this shot? Well, the terrain may dictate it. You might feel more comfortable with this shot. You might be off just to the side with a tree in front of you bothering you. And what we do with this shot is we will carry it somewhere up to 30, 40 yards short of the green and let it run right onto the green and up to the pin. So let's just try a 6-iron for this shot. Now, what are we going to do to hit this shot? First of all, we're going to narrow our stance down. We're going to flex our knees. We're going to get the ball back almost to the right foot, just inside the right leg. The hands are going to stay forward, and we're going to hood the club or hold it in a very square position to hit this shot. We're going to take it back about halfway and then go right through, and as I said, we're going to carry it up to, 30, 40 yards short of the green and let it run on into the pin. Now, this shot can be a terrific stroke saver in very windy conditions for one, or conditions where you don't want to get the ball up in the air. You don't want to let it get away from you. You want to keep total control of it. So let's just try one. It's certainly a reduction in the swing. It's not a full swing. We're going to keep the head in a very steady position, the hands forward, and take it back and go right through. And the ball is going to run and run, and it's going to eventually get right up on the green. Not a bad shot. Now we're going to look at a shot that some people think is a very difficult shot. I personally really do not mind the shot. Certainly I'd rather have a look at the pin, but here we are with a blind shot and approximately 100 yards. So it's a full wedge shot. We're going to figure out how we can get that ball right to the flag. First thing we're going to do is kind of walk up this hill and get some idea where the pin is relative to the ball and the hill. Well, I look at the hill, I get an imaginary line right to the hole. Now I have a little wind coming over my shoulder from the left, and it's going to blow the ball slightly to the right. So I'm going to take that into consideration right now, and I'm going to crank that into my shot, and that'll be about a 5-yard wind, so I'll count on aiming to the left of the hole approximately 5 yards. And then I'm going to find something else that will give me a visual aid to hitting this shot. There's a dark green tree in back of the green and slightly to the left. And there's an opening, and then there's a lighter tree to the right. And I know that the pin is right in between those two trees. So if I take the right edge of the dark green tree on the left and crank my 5 yards in for wind, I can come back to the ball, and I know exactly where I want to hit this shot. I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the tree, looking at the ball, and my imaginary line on the hill, and I'm going to hit a normal full wedge right to the flag. And then I'm going to run up the hill and see how close I am. Here we are with a shot that a lot of us have trouble with. It's a shot that we have to play, let's say, a half shot, a knockdown shot. Let's just call this shot a shot that is a knockdown shot. What club are we going to use? Well, I suppose we could pick a number of clubs, but in this particular instance, let's take the pitching wedge. A pitching wedge that is going to be played approximately 70 yards. We're going to call it a knockdown shot because we're going to knock it down, knock it right at the hole. We're going to show you various methods for playing this shot, but first of all, we're going to choke the club down just slightly, about halfway down the grip. And we're going to take a little narrower stance, and we're going to take that wedge, we're going to keep our hands forward and move the ball back again, just slightly into the stance. Going to get over the ball, keep our head in a very steady position over the ball, and we're going to keep the club low to the ground again. We're going to keep it on the same level as the ground, taking it back slightly on the inside and being sure, in this case, to get the ball first and then go right through it to the pin, the knockdown shot. And that shot is going to run right up on the green and give us an opportunity to get our birdie on this par 5 hole. An alternative to the knockdown shot with a pitching wedge is the sand iron shot into the green. Now, this shot is a 70-yard shot. We're going to use the sand iron and a fairly normal position with the sand iron. In 70-yard shots, we're choking down just very slightly for a little better control. Everything is pretty much in the normal position for this shot. And, of course, as we go through the shot, it will turn out to be a fairly normal sand iron shot to the green. Okay, we have shown you the knockdown shot with the pitching wedge. Now we have shown you the sand iron shot with the sand iron. Let's go to one other alternative to play this shot from 70 yards out. And again, depending on the terrain and the position of the ball, this could be a position where the really safest shot you could possibly play would be the pitch and run shot. Now, we've covered the pitch and run from 100 yards. Now we're looking at 70 yards, and again, I will refer to some of the old timers that I used to watch at Pinehurst many, many years ago, and they were experts at playing this pitch and run. They never thought of carrying the ball into the green unless they had to. Why? Simply because the undulation in the greens was so severe they couldn't depend on what the ball was going to do when it hit the green. Well, if we look at modern golf course architecture and we see what's happening today, we're seeing a lot of that severe undulation in the greens come back. And sometimes it just isn't appropriate to carry the ball into the greens where that undulation is going to have a big effect. So what's the alternative again? The pitch and run shot. So we take a 5-iron, and this, of course, is my choice. It could be a 4, it could be a 6, your choice. But it's a less lofted club. We're going to choke down on that club almost to the end of the grip. And then we're going to move the ball back in our stance. We're going to keep the club face square to the line, if not hooded just slightly. We're going to keep our hands forward, and we're going to keep our head in a very still position for this shot. And in this particular instance, we're going to carry the ball somewhere around 20 yards short of the green and let it run right on into the green from this position. And keep rolling. That's the way. Sometimes that's the safest shot to play in this particular situation. We're about 20 yards from the edge of the green, and the pin is on the green about 5 yards. A very difficult shot, a shot that you really have to use your mind and think about before you make the decision on just what you're going to do. What are the alternatives? Well, one is a sand iron, and let's just assume that we want to hit this sand iron right up on the fringe of the green and have it stop very quickly at the hole. To do that, we have to take this sand iron, and of course we're going to lay it open. Now, what does that mean? That means that I'm going to open up this club and have the face open, keep my hands forward, and know that as I come through the ball is going to jump up in the air fairly quickly, and it's going to have a pretty good spin on it to stop it quickly. So we're going to stand up to the ball. We're going to open the stance. We're going to put the ball right off the inside of the left heel, maybe a little forward of that. And we're going to open the blade up. We're going to keep our hands forward. And in this shot, we want to be very deliberate, taking the club back on the inside and, of course, coming through, imparting that spin that's going to stop the ball very quickly as it gets to the green. And there it is, and not bad. We're looking for ways of saving strokes. Now, we talked about the 5 and the 6 iron from a little further out. Now we've got a situation where we really want to carry the ball up there, so let's take an 8 iron. And we've got a little more loft now, so we can hit this ball just a little further and let it run up to the hole. Again, now if I were looking for a shot that was safe and one that I felt a little more like, well, I'm going to get it up pretty close and I'm going to have a putt at it, it would be this shot. So I choke down on the club, right down almost to the steel again. And I set the club down, I square it or hood it just slightly, and keeping very still, hit it right down and run it right on into the green. And that is a little safer shot. Now, that doesn't eliminate all the alternatives we have. Let's say we are approximately 25 yards from the hole. Let's go to another alternative. And that alternative might be the 4 iron. We're going to be looking like we have a putter. And hey, sometimes we might seriously consider a putter for this shot. But let's take the 4 iron and let's just look at the possibility of playing a shot that would be very much to the likes of a putter. And let's talk about the grip in this particular situation. I see a lot of the younger people playing golf today, and we've talked about the Varden or overlapping grip. Now we have a situation where we're going to change that a little bit. We're going to go to a putter grip, and that may be the reverse overlap. And now all the fingers of the right hand are on the club, and we're going to put the left hand on the club, and much the same as the overlap holding a putter. Now, what does that do to the swing? Well, it does a couple things, because it puts you more in a position of, let's say we're going to be hitting a putter, but in this case, it's a 4 iron. And why a 4 iron versus a putter? Because we want to get that little loft to start the ball on its way to the hole, and won't be quite as interfered with. If I were using a putter, one of the things that I would have to be thinking about would be I'd be possibly hitting the ball down in the turf. And that could have some influence on what happens to the golf ball as it goes to the hole. With a 4 iron or 5 iron or a club of less loft of your selection, we can use the reverse overlap, much the same as we do with our putter. In doing so, I hold the club up, and of course it now is taking the position of almost being a putter with one exception, and that is it has loft on it. It has that loft that is going to get me over the first few feet of this shot, and then it's going to run right up to the hole. So in one sense, it's a pitch and run. In another sense, it's really kind of an extended putter shot. Okay, let's try it. And there it goes. And you know, really worked out pretty well. Now we have another situation where we're just about 20 yards off the green, but the pin is almost 20 yards on the green. And that requires a little different shot. And of course, you know, in golf, they have tried over the years to build golf clubs that would suit any shot you might come to. And in this case, the most appropriate club here would be the pitching wedge. And of course, the name of the club tells you that this is a shot you should pitch the ball right up onto the green and let it roll slightly up to the hole. That's where there is a lot of green between the edge that you're shooting to and the pin. And to do that, it's a fairly normal shot. You choke down, of course, on the club with the pitching club, and you then address the ball much the same way. The grip is pretty much the same. The stance is narrower, but not too narrow. You're very solid on your feet. Your head is in a good position. And, of course, you pitch the ball right up onto the green and allowing it to run right up to the hole. Now, this is a shot that's a fairly straightaway shot, and it's one that can really save you strokes. Now, I'd like to cover that distance, or the difference in the distance, by walking halfway to the hole from here and playing the shot again. And in this case, I've selected a 9-iron. And what you do in these instances, you have a choice. And of course, the proper choice is very important for playing this shot. For me, a 9-iron is very appropriate to pitch the ball onto the green from about 10 to 15 yards off the green and let it run right up to the hole. Remember, I've selected a 9-iron. Could be your choice, an 8, a 7, the pitching wedge, again, if you wish. What I'm trying to do is gauge the edge of the green to the pin and carry the ball just over that edge so it'll run right up to the hole. And in doing so, allow the ball to run up to and stop right at the hole. We're in a sand trap now, and we've covered the sand shot in the earlier tapes. What I would like to do is very quickly review the normal sand shot. And of course, we're going to use the Vardner overlapping grip. We're going to choke down just slightly on the club. Our stance, we're going to work our feet into the sand with an open stance, getting very well situated to hit this shot. We're going to keep our hands slightly forward, our head in a good position, the club slightly open at the ball, and hit right down and through, and make sure that we stay firm through the golf ball. That is the normal sand shot. Now, I'd like to take you to a few unusual sand shots. In a sand trap, when the ball gets into the back of the sand trap where you really feel like you're being treated roughly or not getting the right breaks, this is a shot that we really put in the scoring zone as one. If you can save a stroke here, you are very fortunate. In this particular instance, the ball is in a position that we've seen it in many, many times. And the good news is that it's far enough away from the back lip that as I address it, I can get the club up and back down under the ball. So we'll just try that shot. And of course, we're laying the blade open, very open for this shot. And we're going to take the club up abruptly and come right down under the ball. And it should come out satisfactorily. Okay, that was pretty easy, and sometimes judged a difficult shot. But remember, I stayed firm through the shot. I didn't let up, and I didn't try to hit it too hard. I went right through the shot. Now we have an even more difficult situation, and that situation is that the ball has stopped on the downslope. We really have no room to use the sand iron. As a matter of fact, we really have not much room to stand. It's an awkward position. The sand is pulled back up. There aren't many alternatives here. So I've selected a 3-iron to play this shot. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to play it to run through the sand, up the bank, and onto the green. At best, it's a dangerous situation, but it can come off and work. And a lot of times, you have to use your imagination and think how this would work and how hard you have to hit it. Well, I'm going to choke way down on this club, right down to the metal. I'm going to stand forward, and then I'm going to make sure that I can get the club on the ball. And I'm going to try to run it right through the trap and up onto the green, and where I might have an opportunity to make the putt. Keeping my hands well forward, I want to be very positive on this shot. I've taken most of the loft off the 3-iron. I've simply closed it up, hooded it, and I'm going to run the ball right down the hill and through the trap onto the green. And in this case, it worked pretty well. It's not an unusual situation to see the ball come into the sand trap and end up like this. And as I said, just about the time you think you're going good, this will happen to you. So, again, we're in the scoring zone. We want to know how we can get this out and get it up to the hole. Well, certainly there's one thing that never hurts, and that's being strong. But even for those of us who aren't all that strong and overpowering, there is a way. And of course, it's closing that blade up and getting up ahead of the golf ball. Now you can see I'm in a very awkward situation here, and a lot of the time when we get into this position, we find people opening the blade up. Now, opening it up to get this shot out of the sand is not the way to do it. It will only drive the ball up under that lip further and make it even more difficult. So, to get it up quickly, we want to close it up or hold it right square at the ball. Now, as I said earlier, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit stronger when you're hitting this shot. But here we are, and we're staying ahead with the hands, and we're going to take the club back, and we're going to bring it up just a little more abruptly than we might usually bring it up. And as we come back down, we're going to keep our head very, very still, and we're going to come right back underneath the golf ball. Now, I say underneath the golf ball because it is vitally important to get the club under the ball in this shot and let that loft get the ball up in the air. So here we go. We're going to hold the club fairly firm. We're going to come right up and back down and through the ball. And look at that. It popped right up in the air and rolling right up to the pin. So it really isn't quite as difficult as we sometimes make it. Occasionally, we walk into a sand trap and we find the ball lying exceptionally good in the trap, meaning it's setting up and it looks like, gee, I could just pick that out of there with a 8-iron or a 9-iron or 7-iron and run it right up. A pitch shot out of the sand. Frankly, when I see someone do this and I'm playing against them, I feel just a little bit better about my game and what's going to happen as an end result. In other words, in the stroke-saving zone, I do not recommend that you pitch the ball out of a sand trap with anything other than a sand iron unless you have really practiced that shot and you understand it totally. I'm going to play one. It's the most difficult shot I have ever tried to play, simply because I can't be that accurate. But there are people, and there have been people, who play this shot very, very well. What it means is that you just simply have to get the ball and not the sand, and that makes it very, very difficult. Sure, it worked out that time, but just the slightest move and you're into the sand, and the ball really doesn't go anywhere. When you have a situation where the ball is lying pretty good in the sand and there's no lip on the edge of the sand, as you see, the sand runs right up to the grass, and of course that gives you that opportunity to take the putter, maybe Texas wedge as you would call it. The reason it's called Texas wedge and the reason we might sometimes use it out of the sand is that there's really no obstructions in the way of having this ball roll right up to the hole. So we're really just bringing the putt into the sand trap. Again, I will remind you, I do not recommend this shot highly. In some instances, I would play it, and I would recommend that you give it consideration. I also recommend you try it in a practice session before you do it in the sand trap. And of course, what are we doing differently? Not a great deal. We are pretty much the same. The ball, we keep, of course, the club off the sand. You cannot rest the club in the sand. That's a penalty, as you know. And much similar to any putting situation, I keep my hands forward and stay very still and careful to hit the ball with the putter and not the sand. Get the ball and not the sand, keeping my head very still. And that shot will work.
We now move to the part of the game which in some minds is the hardest element to master in the game of golf, and that is putting. To review some of the topics Arnie taught us in Volume 1 in the basic fundamentals is to keep our heads still during putting. Any head movement is the prime cause of a mishit putt. Another fundamental is to make sure we have the proper body balance when we putt. We must also be sure to play the ball off our left heel and have our head directly over the ball with our hands played slightly ahead. During the stroke, we must be sure to keep both hands moving toward the hole throughout the stroke. One of the most important aspects of putting is to have a positive attitude. As nobody knows better than Arnold, you must have lots of confidence as you stroke the putt. Now here's Arnold as he teaches us other elements in the art of putting.
Now we're going to talk just a few moments about how we read a putt that breaks either left or right, or how we compensate for the grain in the greens, and what do you do to read that grain. And we have various types of grasses. We have the bent grasses, and then we have the Bermuda grasses. There's one thing about reading the breaks or the grain in the greens that applies generally to both bent and Bermuda grasses. And if we would look down at the green, you can see as I run the putter across the green how I pull the grass up. Now that simply means that the grain is lying in that direction. It's going that way. Now as I run the putter back across the grass, you will see that that lies back down. And that means that it's growing in that direction. Now, what effect does that have on the golf ball? Going with the grain, the ball meets less resistance. It means that it rolls smoothly and freely with the grain. Going against the grain, it will be a little more, or meet a little more resistance, or a little slower putt. There are other methods of reading the grain in the greens, and one example of that is the way the grass, when the cup is cut. Now, you will see, and we have discussed that the grain is going this way in this green just slightly. And if you look where the grain comes over the edge of the cup, you will see a certain pulling in the grass. It's pulled down into the edge of the cup, and where it is growing away, you'll see the grass has pulled the grass itself away from the cup. And there's a very distinct difference. This is a much more dominant factor in Bermuda than it is in bent, because the bent grasses are much softer and will cut a lot easier with the cup cutter. So when the grain is going that way, you will notice that the grass is cut freer and is pulled away. Where the grass is growing to the cup cutter, you'll see that it is pulled over the edge of the cup. And that will tell you the way the grass or the grain is growing. Another phase in the putting is the long putt, saving strokes by making a good stroke on the long putt. To do that, we look at the putt we have, how many mounds, what the undulation is to the hole, and we have a feel for the green itself, how fast the ball's going to roll, uphill, downhill, and so forth. So we get over the ball, we give it a nice smooth stroke. We're trying to lag that ball up to where we can make that next putt, and not 3-putt or 4-putt. Getting through, accelerating through that putt is very, very important. Keeping the putter going right through it, keeping my head in a very still position as I stroke that putt. We want to be sure that we get this ball up to the hole where we can make that next putt. And hitting these long putts will help us with the shorter putts also. We talk about those 250-yard drives, and think about it. You're hitting it 250 yards, and it's the same stroke as this 3-foot putt. So it's much, much more important to make this 3-foot putt, and I won't say more important, but as important, to make this 3-foot putt as it is to hit that drive 250 yards. So we need to devise a system where we are reasonably sure that we are going to get this putt in the hole every time or almost every time. As we address the ball, we get in a good, comfortable position, and I suppose one of the most important things about putting is feeling like you are very solid over the putt, that you're not going to move out of position as you stroke the ball. We're going to keep our head very still. We're not going to get our arms in real tight against our body, but we're also not going to get them out where they are uncomfortable away from the body. We're going to try to get them down where we have freedom of movement, and that includes being able to stroke through without feeling like you're going to hit your body somewhere as you hit that putt. So as we get over the putt, we get our head in a good position, our hands are comfortable on the club, firm but not squeezing too tight. One of the most important things we can do is take the putter back slowly and deliberately, and only as far as necessary to hit that putt to the hole, meaning we want to get it back and follow through right to the hole. And that is vitally important. Getting the ball to the hole, accelerating right through that putt. Not breaking down, as we talked before, but following right through with both hands to the hole. The system is one way or the other. It can't go to the right, it can't go to the left. Every individual must devise that system to keep that putt going right at the hole and knowing that he has eliminated one side or the other. That means that his chance of making this putt is, to begin with, 50% better than it was if the putt could go either way. The right to left putt. This putt is maybe one of the easier putts, and I suppose that those of us who have played golf for as long as we have, if we had a putt that we had to make, we would choose the right to left putt. What do? I move the ball back just a very small bit in my stance. I'd like to line the ball up just inside the sweet spot on the putter so that I'm hitting it in the inside of the putter just very slightly. Staying very still over the putt, through the putt. Now we have the left to right breaking putt, and to me this is one of the more difficult putts to make. And I will sometimes line the ball up just outside the sweet spot or towards the toe to hit this putt, taking a little of the break out of the putt. That will sometimes help you get a little more feel for how you would like to hit this putt, staying very still, just a little on the outside of the sweet spot. The left to right putt, again, is one of the more difficult putts, using a fairly normal stroke, except that we might line the ball up just outside or towards the toe in hitting this putt. The next phase is the uphill putt, and this putt is one that we really have the best opportunity to make it without the danger of three putting, simply because we're going uphill and we can hit the ball just a little harder and not be as concerned about it going too far by the hole. Right in the hole, and being sure that we always hit it by the hole, keeping very steady and hitting it right up and to the hole. Accelerating through the putt and being sure that we get the putt by the hole, right in the cup. The downhill putt is a treacherous putt at times, and to make this putt a little more effective and get the line on it, we line it up just a little on the toe of the putter. That allows us to give it a little more hit than we might give it if we were hitting it in the sweet spot. Lining it up on the toe and hitting it on the toe allows us to hit the ball just a little firmer, making it roll down that hill very smoothly into the cup. It's very still, out on the toe, just the slightest hit to get it started down that hill and to the hole. Keeping very still, lining it up, a fairly normal stroke, with the exception of taking it out to the toe so that we can't give it a little bump just to make it roll a little more accurately to the hole. Sometimes, I'm sure you've had it happen to you, the ball rolls up against the fringe of the green where it becomes rather difficult to hit the shot away or hit the putt away. And of course, we like to use the putter, and we would in a lot of instances. To do that, I like to hold the putter up just above the grass, and that gives me the freedom to get the putter away and hit the ball, keeping the putter just above the grass so that it will not hit in the fringe and slow the ball down. That, to me, is the proper way to stroke this putt. There's another way of playing this shot, and it isn't with the putter. It's with the sand iron. Let me show you that shot. To play this shot, we have the ball against the fringe, and of course, in a lot of instances, that fringe can be very severe. So, what we do is we will use the same grip as we used on the putter with the sand iron. We will take the club and put it right to the center of the golf ball so that the fringe will have no influence whatsoever on this shot. And it works out very well. Sometimes I think maybe I should putt with the wedge. Now, the ball has rolled over the green, and we find it in the fringe, and it's to the next cut, which is much deeper than the first, and of course, really gives us a serious problem. So we're going to play that same shot again. And what that is we're going to hit the ball right in the middle so that we won't have to get down into this deep grass with a bad lie. Same grip, putter grip, hitting the ball right in the center, keeping very, very still. And it takes a lot of ifs out of that shot. Putting the ball from off the green can be really one of the most important stroke savers in our phase of saving strokes and cutting our score down. So anytime you feel comfortable with a putter off the green, I certainly approve of using it. Now here we're about 10 feet off the green, and the biggest thing we have to judge is what the ball is going to do in that first 10 feet of fringe. Now if the fringe were really rough and deep and inconsistent, then I would suggest you pitch the ball with a pitching club. But here we have a fairly consistent rough or approach to the putt, and it certainly is appropriate to hit that putt and have it roll right up to the hole. Whoops. And of course, that will give us an opportunity to save a lot of strokes. Again, just hitting that putt nice and smooth from the edge, much the same as we hit the long putts, taking it right down and through and accelerating through that shot. But again, I must tell you that if the green is rough and there are some unpredictable things there that you're not sure what the ball's going to do, then I really suggest you pitch it. But when you have a good opportunity, such as this, to take a stroke and hit it right to the hole with the putter from off the fringe, I would suggest you go ahead and do it. Now we've talked about saving shots and scoring zone shots. Think how many times you have been only maybe 40, 30, 20 feet from the hole, and you find yourself in this, the rough, the deep, strong rough. Generally, this shot can be played with a pitching wedge, a sand iron, I would prefer, at this point in time, to play it with a sand iron. And what do I do with this club that makes it different and makes it a little easier? One, I close the blade, and I close it sharply. And in a lot of instances, I'll even aim to the right of my target. And as I come down and through the ball, I'm sure that I'm going to get the ball on the face of the club. Closing the blade and hitting right down and through the shot and getting it rolling right towards the hole. With the closed blade, the same lie and the same shot. Very much controlling the shot. So, had I played that shot a little differently, I might have been the National Open champion a couple more times. Well, that concludes Volume 3, The Scoring Zone. And you know, over the years that I have played professional golf, I have never known a great player who did not play very well from 100 yards in. Whether it be that little sand shot, a 2.5-foot putt, whatever it might have been, all the great players, from Snead to Hogan to Nicklaus to Player, have really been great players in that short scoring area. I hope you will keep this in mind when you're out there practicing.